In the brand new anime card pack, we saw a couple of brand new cards introduced. One of the main ones we've covered thus far on the channel was the new Red Eye support with the Dragon Link implications. Now we're going to be having a look at the Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid Neo Tempest Terahertz. A bit of a mouthful, of course, but this card is genuinely really fucking good. The reason it's good, initially when I read it, I was a little bit underwhelmed. It can attack a bunch of times, boost itself up to ridiculous levels of attack points. It negates everything during the battle phase. Really, really cool effects, but I thought, okay, it's a battle phase gimmick, right? So anyone else who looked at that card and thought the same thing, where, you know, it's a battle phase gimmick, it can do a bunch of shit in the battle phase, but it's just going to get interrupted, it's just going to get blown up, it does nothing going first, blah, blah, blah. We were all wrong, because you're going to combine this card with cards like Mirrorlogic Aggregator, which when sent from the extra deck to the graveyard will negate an opponent's card. You're going to combine it with the Wind Pegasus, which provides you protection from destruction and things like that, or at the very least recursion from it. So you're able to generate legitimate sort of value, resources, and interruption from your extra deck off of Firewall Dragon, while being able to attack your opponent multiple times with a ridiculous amount of attack points, sometimes plus 20,000, right? So 20,000 attack multiple times is insane. So I do definitely want to cover it off. This deck was an absolute blast. I do think that this deck is pretty decent. The meta is unforgiving right now, it really is, and I'm not going to lie, I have not been tilted playing any other deck nearly as bad as I was tilted trying to get these replays. I don't know if it was just my bad luck. It felt like it was bad luck. I feel like the deck is better than I was able to sort of show it off to be, but I was tilted as hell trying to get these games. We are going to show off the full combo game number 1. Absolutely, so if you're interested in seeing that, stick around, watch the gameplay. It is a blast no matter what. Even if you don't always summon the Tempest Terahertz, there's a ton of other win conditions in the deck. It is still Mathmech at the end of the day. So if you're interested, watch the gameplay. We'll be doing a card for card deck profile at the end for those of us who are unfamiliar with Mathmechs, or maybe unfamiliar with these new cards. So if you want to see that, stick around as well. Subscribe if you're new. Like the video if you enjoy watching Mathmechs. Every subscription, every like definitely adds up and helps out. And if you want to help even more, of course, there is the ability to join as a member. You can do with the join button below or the link in the description, whatever suits you best if you're in a position to show that extra bit of support. But that's enough talking from me here. Let's get into the first replay. Alrighty, getting in the replay number 1 here. This is going to be a fairly standard game showing off the primary combo, mostly without interruption. We're going to go Circular, send Sigma, special summon itself. For most people who are familiar with Mathmechs, we have covered it a number of times on the channel in the past. This is your basic Mathmech line to start off with, but things start to get a little bit spacey when you get to Transcode Talker. So we're going to start with the Sigma and everything, going into Alimbertion as per normal. Alimbertion gets searching your deck for Diameter. Diameter is a really powerful card here. Diameter, normal summon, bring back the Sigma or the Circular, it doesn't matter. Link 2 off into the Splash Mage here. What 2 you use don't matter. You don't need Parallel Exceed to make this combo happen, but our combo went even smoother because we had Parallel Exceed, which is nice. Summon out Exceed, summon a second one. Splash Mage, bring back the Diameter. Going into Transcode Talker here, Transcode Talker brings back the Splash Mage from the graveyard, and here's where things start to take a bit of a left turn. We're now going to use these 2 to go into the G Golem Crystal Heart. Crystal Heart then brings back the Transcode Talker from the graveyard. Now that's pretty good, because what we need to do here is we're going to use 3 cards to go into the Firewall Dragon, the Dark Fluid Neo Tempest Terahertz. This card is a Link 5 requiring at least 3 different monsters, so we have the Link 2 Golem, Link 2 Splash Mage, and the Link 1 Sigma, of course. So that's how we're able to bring this out, and because we're summoning it next to a Transcode Talker, which is why we did the combo that way, this card is untargetable by your opponent's card effects. Very, very good. You can, if you wanted to like optimize this even further, you could do the combo sort of the other way around in terms of where on the field you're doing it, so you can have these 2 cards in the middle instead of over here, but it literally doesn't matter. It really doesn't. But yeah, and we've also got a random leftover level 4 extender here, which is neat. We're going to use it to go into Lingarebo just to protect us from evenly matched. So we have evenly matched protection. We have an untargetable Transcode Talker and Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid. We have Attic Nister in the graveyard, so during the main phase, if a card you control is destroyed while it's in your graveyard, you can banish this card, target a card your opponent controls, shuffle it into the deck. So if they do manage to destroy something on our field, Attic Nister, Wind Pegasus is going to punish them for it. We can also use our Dark Fluid at any stage to send another Cyberse monster from our deck to the graveyard or extra deck, which is going to be this card. When this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target one face-up card on the field and negate its effects until the end of the turn. So it gives us a negate as well. So untargetable negate. It boosts itself up by 2,500 per card that we send, so long as it's of a different attribute. So this card is just insane. Plus, we of course have the Super Factorial for the full Mathmech play. We have the Crossout Designator, we have Infinite Impermanence, we have Ghost Bell to protect our Mathmech Super Factorial. For anyone who doesn't know what Factorial does, it's going to summon out Laplacian. Laplacian's going to send a card from opponent's monster zones, spell trap zones, and from their hand to the graveyard. So basically spinning 3 cards of theirs to the graveyard, and it'll have an Omni Negate attached to it thanks to Diameter and Grave. This is insane. This is the absolute wet dream of Mathmechs. This is what they go to bed at night dreaming about, right? This is what gets them hard in the morning. So, absolutely. This is incredible. Very, very difficult board to break, short of like a Lava Golem. They're going to go Runic Fountain. I absolutely love when I see a Runic Fountain and I'm playing Mathmech, because it is the freest Super Factorial in the world. Super Factorial right away, targeting 3 in the grave. Make sure you target Diameter, that is the primary card. You definitely want Diameter, everything else is optional, as long as it's got different names. Super Factorial brings them all back to the field. 1, 2, and 3. Immediately Exceed Summon into your Laplacian. Now he's got a monster on board and a card in the spell trap card zone. That is the perfect time to go for Laplacian, because now we get to send a card from his hand, monster zone, and spell trap card zone to the graveyard. And he's got an Omni Negate. He goes to negate us off of Freezing Curses. I don't think so. That shit's getting negated. And yeah, there's just, there ain't no way. It's not for happening. It just isn't. It's just not happening. We snipe Jet out of the hand, which is funny as hell. Getting rid of the Fountain, getting rid of his starter, he's going to go for Smoothing Storm here. He's going to try and special summon out a Runic monster. We're going to chain the Firewall Dark Fluid Dragon. You do need to be a little bit smart when it comes to when you time this card, because this, of course, needs to be sent to the graveyard, and then its negate occurs on a different chain. So what we're doing is we're preemptively sending it. So he summons his Huggin. Huggin activates his Chain Link 1, and then our Aggregator activates his Chain Link 2. We negate his Huggin, and then it actually negates. If we wait until he summons Huggin, it's going to be too late, right? So you do need to learn the timings when it comes to this card a little bit before you... As long as you understand Chain Link resolution, as long as you understand chains and chain links, you're gonna get along just fine with this card. If you don't understand chains or chain links, or you're not sure about it, ask in the comments, hop into the Discord. You can have a chat with me or anybody else, and we can talk through about it. I might even put a video up helping people understand it, but it's really not that complicated. But if you are confused, the Discord is in the description, and you can ask away at us. So we are going to resolve Tempest here, sending our Aggregator. He knows exactly what we're doing. Skips it up. Easy dubs. That is the absolute wet dream of Mathmech. Are you going to get that every game? Absolutely not. It depends entirely upon what sort of interruptions your opponent has. Unfortunately, Mathmech is a little bit prone to interruption right now, which is rather unfortunate. We're going to show off a couple more games here, sort of showing the good and the bad of Mathmech. So keep watching, learn more about the deck, and we will be doing a deck profile at the end. So let's just get into the next one. Alrighty, getting into our second replay here. We're going to go for Foolish Burial Goods from our opponent here, sending Sulliak to the graveyard. That is right, it is another Tearlament deck. And again, once again, working alongside Punk, which you're going to see in just a moment. Summoning out the Siren, sending the Struder to the grave, milling out a Starliege Seifert there, which is pretty interesting. No, it wasn't Seifert, it was Gamma. I'm apparently blind. Okay. Well, we're going to pretend that didn't happen. We're going to go Foxy Toon here. Foxy Toon dropping a card to the graveyard. That's the Rhino Heart bringing out the Deer Note. Rhino Heart doesn't have any targets to summon itself, but the Chaos Ruler is a bit of a problem. Luckily for us, we got that double Imperm on deck. We're going to negate that Chaos Ruler because I don't really want to be dealing with him milling 5 cards. Which seems to be the primary benefit of the Punk engine that most people are using. They're not using a Punk deck, they're using the Punk engine, which, I mean, I get, but like, Punk has so much more to offer than just level 8s, man. It's so much better than that. But either way, they're going to go for the Riser here. This is interesting because immediately as soon as I saw Riser, I was like, oh no, he knows what I'm planning. He's going to be able to stop me here. I decided to commit to the play anyway. He's going to go for Vampire. We are going to Imperm. And the Imperm actually resolves because I forgot that Riser, the card that you send off of Riser can't activate its effects during the turn in which you send it. So I When at the time, my heart sank. I was like, oh no, he's gonna banish the vampire off the snow. He's gonna mill 4 extra cards, and I'm gonna be depressed. But no, I just didn't know how to read. The card you send off Riser cannot activate its effects on the turn you send it. So crisis averted. End phase. Our opponent has got nothing. Let's see if we can pull this back, and we just draw the perfect card for doing it. We draw into the evenly matched, wiping the board, keeping the vampire on. That's fine. Now he does still have snow and grave. Do remember that. This is not an empty board. We do have to deal with snow, and we've only got 2 cards left in hand. So it's not as if we've got nothing. We had to give up a lot of resources to whittle this board down. This isn't like oh, we just walked into a free win. No, we had to fucking chicken dinner this shit. So we are going to go for mining. We're going to go circular now. Send the Sigma to summon the circular. He's going to chain the snow here. We know his objective is to preemptively flip the circular face down before it can activate and resolve its effects here. That's totally fine. We saw it coming. We do luckily have Sigma in grave, as well as subtraction being in our hand is awesome. Being able to reduce our opponent down. Summoning out the Alimbertion. Alimbertion then get detaching, get searching. We're going to search out a diameter. I didn't realize at first that I would be able to use Alimbertion to trip it off circular to summon circular back. You're going to see that in just a second, because in this game I do remember. There you go, tribute circular, summon circular back, just like that. It's as if nothing happened. Splash Mage brings out a monster. We're able to bring a card back from the graveyard. Back comes subtraction, triggering the circular to grab the super factorial from the deck. Linking off yet again in the Transcode Talker here. I don't believe we have the resources for the full play, so I don't go for it. I think in this case we go... Oh, we do go for the G-Gold and Crystal Heart. Okay, Crystal Heart, bringing back the Transcode. We do have the resources here for the Tempest Terahertz going into our Firewall Dragon. I am full of shit. Apparently we do go all the way, sending Pegasus, setting a card. Now we got the untargetable, we got the negate, we got the super factorial. Our opponent's got no cards, no useful things in their graveyard, no foes, no bitches. He is fucked. Let's see if he's going to even make an attempt to get past us here. We should have preemptively used Factorial to stop this from happening. This was a mistake. I was kicking myself at the time. Definitely should have used Super Factorial before he even got a chance. I was literally hitting my toggle on as it went in the main phase because I was like panicking, trying to get it done. We missed our opportunity, unfortunately. He does get to bring out a Fenrir. We do flip it up. We can't afford Fenrir to be around. Not that it even does much, because again, our shit's untargetable. So we literally don't even care, but it's the only useful card on his board, so we are going to get rid of it nonetheless off of our Laplacian. Laplacian, sending a card, sending card out of hand, sending a Kelbeck. Kelbeck in hand is nuts. I can't believe the one card he had in his hand was a fucking Kelbeck. Luckily, he orders his chain links like this, so we are able to use Laplacian to negate the Kelbeck before he gets a chance to use Fenrir to negate us, or to banish us, sorry, which is just fine. Chaos Ruler and Grave activates, banishing 2, but I don't really know what his plan is here. He doesn't exactly have a ton of useful resources he can work alongside. Going in the Cross Heap here, activating Fairy Tale Snow to try and summon it to a zone the Cross Heap points to, but his only real play is Battle Phase beat over Transcode. Sure, our Firewall becomes targetable, but what are you going to target it with? You can't do it with Snow because it's a Link monster. So yeah, he just didn't have an out to the crazy amount of attack points that our Firewall Dragon would have had once we actually summon it. So GG's, unfortunate L for our opponent there. Let's get into game 3. Alright, getting into game 3, going second here, opening up with a maximum sheesh, but of course we're not going to get a chance to resolve that sheesh as our opponent does have the Called by the Grave. Now this, I'm going to fast forward through this game, right, because we've one interruption left in hand, that's fine. I want to show this and use this as an example of displaying how absolutely insane the meta is right now because of Punk, right? Punk is going to be a huge part of this meta, and people have been calling me crazy. I knew that Punk was going to be top tier. I've known from it came out it was going to be top tier. I've covered it non-stop since, and this deck is absolutely crazy, and our opponent is using a very aggressive version of Punk in particular. We do manage to imperm the Rising card before it gets to use its effect, which is a little something. He does get a Pot of Greed here off the walk on. Crazy the amount of draw power this gets. It is absolutely insane. Gotta banish the Zeoman, summon out the Madame Spider. Luckily for us, he didn't have the ability to press any further than that. We do top deck in the Imperm, which we're not going to use. We don't really need it yet. Dropping a mining to search for our diameter. We have Circular in hand, which we're going to use right away. Our opponent doesn't have anything notable in graveyard, but does have the Drissworm stopping us from using our Sigma. We were in a position where we had two main options. We could have linked off our Circular into Linkaribo and then normal summoned Diameter to bring back Circular, but then we wouldn't have been able to activate this card's search effect. So we sort of had to weigh up whether or not we wanted to search. We are going to activate the search, but we're going to grab Equation this time because I'm pretty confident looking at this board, we're not going to get a chance to utilize the Super Factorial. We really need to start pressing for some big plays here. We're going to go Splash Mage. Splash Mage, we also need to remember that face down card here is probably a Dangerous Gabu or a Nashawari. Going Transcode, targeting the Splash Mage, bringing it back. Equation, then bringing back another monster from the graveyard. Now we're going to go into the Decode Talker and Transcode line. So this is a fallback lane you can do. We're going to get the draw one off the Heat Soul, drawing into the Super Factorial, but we don't have enough Mathmech's Engrave to utilize it, at least not to any sort of decent extent. We are able to go into the battle phase. He will draw an extra card off Wagon. Sucks to be us, I guess. We're going to take that out, and we only get to attack with one monster thanks to Circular locking us into one monster only. So we have to basically just pray that Infinite Impermanence as well as our untargetable field here, and the draw one is going to be enough. We do draw in the Max C, which is very interesting. We're going to go for the Wagon draw one. They are going to search their deck for a spell card. We do resolve Max C on this occasion, so all we need to do is wait to see if that's enough to dissuade our opponent from going for lethal damage. They are going to get searching here, drawing a card off the field spell, then using the field spell, banishing a Foxy Tune to summon out a Deer Note, Synchro Summoning now into the Jam Dragon Drive. Jam Dragon will pay 600 life points to get searching, as well as Deer Note bringing back the Raising Carp from the graveyard. Deer Note, now the Raising Carp in particular, is a big problem because that will allow any of their punk monsters to attack twice on this turn. That will be one of the deciding factors in whether or not they're able to press for lethal damage. They're going to go Xiamen here, paying 600, get searching for a Foxy Tune from the deck, which they've already utilized, before going into the Underworld Goddess. Goddess removing our Transcode's protection as well as weakening our Decode Talker Heat Soul, negating its effects. It's really, really bad. We are going to go for an Imperm here onto the Underworld Goddess. At least if we Imperm it, we can resolve our our Super Factorial to summon out Diameter and Circular. We get searching, and we do have an Omni Negate then in that circumstance. It might have been enough to keep us safe and alive, but unfortunately, our opponent drew like 6 cards. Of course they have Cross-Site Designator. I mean, there's only so much you can do about that. I mean, they drew constantly off their Wagon, off their field spell, off all of these cards. They just drew endlessly. 3k to the face. We flip up Super Factorial just, I don't know, to show our hand, but it can't resolve thanks to Goddess. It does in fact shut us down. So that's 3k from the Underworld Goddess of the Closed World and 33 from the Jam Dragon. That's game. Unfortunate, and that's the type of power, type of consistency, type of draw power, type of breaking power that you're needing to compete with, right? And Mathmech, as cool as it is, and as powerful as Circular is, and as cool as Sigma is, and as cool as Depletion is, and Super Factorial, it has like the key ingredients and pieces of being a really, really powerful deck. It's just the auxiliary pieces around it, they don't really do much, right? Diameter's pretty underwhelming, multiplication's pretty underwhelming, addition and subtraction are cool, but they're not like special. I don't know. The deck, it's very much a single track sort of deck. It's doing one thing and doing that one thing really well. So whenever you meet a deck that can outdo you in that thing, or can at the very least weather the storm of that thing and then counter you through another means, it can get pretty tough. It really can. It was games like these that just led me to absolutely just throwing the head up. I was tilted as hell playing these games. But either way, let's get into the deck profile. So the good thing about this, with the new Neo Tempest Dragon, is that you don't actually have to change your core strategy, right? The core strategy remains the same. It is just basically almost just like an outright buff, right? It is a very powerful boss monster that you don't really need to adjust your core strategy for very much, and it can result in you winning games that you otherwise shouldn't have won. So I do think this is actually probably a better way of playing Mathmech than what Mathmech has been doing until now, if you're talking about pure Mathmech. Now, I think pure Mathmech as a rule or as a whole right now is a little bit underwhelming. I definitely think it's good enough to compete to some extent, but it's definitely not going to be seeing the tier list anytime soon. I think even describing it as rogue would be a little bit disingenuous. It's not high level rogue. You could describe it as sort of mid to low level. It's definitely not garbage, right? It's not like some fucking F tier fucking table 500 bullshit. It is definitely a decent deck that you will win games with, absolutely. you just won't win them as often as you would have liked, right? So let's get in, we'll talk about the deck. One of the good things about the deck that I really like is that you have room for 101 hand traps, which is really, really cool. We are playing the standard maxi package, of course, triple maxi, triple ash, double called by, singular crossout. We are playing Ghost Bell because you do have a particular weakness to shufflers and Bastille cards, so the Ghost Bell definitely does help you sort of deal with those cards a little bit in particular. We've got the triple Imperm just because it's a really solid hand trap right now in general, and we run the triple Evenly Matched because breaking boards with this deck is an absolute nightmare. So having something like Evenly Matched, Dark Ruler No More, anything like that, triple Tactics Talents, just something to help you break a board is definitely going to be virtually mandatory, I think. And I think Evenly is one of the best among them. I think Evenly is the way to go. So that's our hand trap lineup. You can do whatever you want with that information. You've got, what, 16 spots there? Go nuts. You do you. We were actually playing a 41 card deck, so we were playing 17 spots. Okay, so let's talk about the cards. Let's begin with the actual Mathmech cards. First and foremost is Circular, the ace monster of the main deck, and basically like the only good main deck Mathmech card. Like, Nabla is neat, Sigma's pretty decent, I think. Everything else is just kind of mid. Diameter has a really niche usage here. Of course, Diameter is absolutely mandatory. This card is incredible for this one thing that it does, but in general, it's a relatively underwhelming card in its own sort of right. The only one that's actually really good is Circular, because this card can special summon itself from the hand by sending a Mathmech monster from deck to graveyard, which in and of itself is insane, but it does lock you in the attacking with only one monster during that turn. Of course, the thing about that is if you're attacking with a Sigma or a double attacking access code or a Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid, you generally don't need to worry about attacking with more than one monster. One monster is normally fine, if you're pressing for lethal, that is. So that's usually not an issue. And then if a Mathmech is summoned to the field while you control this, you get to search your deck for a Mathmech spell or trap. So it summons itself for free, it sends a Mathmech from deck to grave, like a Sigma, which we'll talk about next, and it also searches your deck for your spells and traps. Circular is busted. Circular is absolutely amazing and is the only and sole reason Mathmech is even considered somewhat semi-playable. It is just Circular. That is it. So let's talk about the rest of the cards. Starting off with Sigma. Sigma is the card you'll normally send off of your Circular. If you have nothing in your extra monster zone, you can special summon it out to the field. It is a level 4 tuner. Pretty solid little effect here in combination with Circular. It will banish itself if it leaves the field as a monster after being summoned through that effect. However, if you use it as Exceed material and then detach it, you're going to avoid that being a problem. So generally speaking, that's not a concern. So you'll normally just use Circular to send Sigma, summon Circular, then use Sigma's own effect to summon it as well. That triggers your Circular search. Anyone who's if you watch the gameplay, you saw it. It's not that difficult to work out. And if you're familiar with Mathmechs, it is the standard Mathmech line. Pretty awesome stuff overall. We have Nabla, which can tribute a Cyberse monster you control to special summon a Mathmech monster from your deck to the field. I'm going to pair this up with Multiplication because they both have similar secondary effects. This card's primary effect is you target a level 4 Cyberse monster and change its level to 8. The idea behind these two cards in particular is they want to work with your Sigma to push for mass lethal. So this is a level 4 tuner, of course. This is a level 4 non-tuner, which can change the level of one of your monsters to 8. If this card is sent to the graveyard, you can target a Cyberse monster in your extra monster zone, specifically the extra monster zone, and that card can attack up to twice on monsters during the battle phase. The idea is that you're going to make your access code talker, or ideally your Sigma, be able to attack multiple times. Multiplication then will similarly target a Cyberse monster in the extra monster zone, and until the end of the turn, its attack is doubled. That is, of course, going to work well with your 2 big boss monsters, but primarily with your Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid, because this card's attack, natively speaking, will already be boosted up to the likes of 10,500, based off of its own effect. Because by the time, if you're going first, by the time you're coming back around to your turn, this will have had the chance to use its ability 3 times, which means it gains 7,500 attack points, meaning it'll either be 10,500 if it's not linked to anything, or if it's co-linked with Transcode Talker, which it normally is, it'll be 11,000. So Multiplication will be able to boost it up to 22,000. Even off of its own effect, it can already attack 3 times. That is insane. So yeah, these cards Really, really cool in these situations where you can press for crazy amounts of damage and lethal. But again, generally speaking, you don't want to see them in your hand. They're otherwise underwhelming. They don't do a lot on their own. So yeah. We have addition and subtraction, both of which basically just special summon themselves from the hand to the field. This one by targeting a monster and adding 1,000 attack points. This one by targeting a monster and removing 1,000 attack points. They're just extenders. Then we got diameter on normal summon. Grab a level 4 Cyberse from your graveyard and special summon it, but you can't activate its effects. Decent enough effect, helps you extend pretty well. You don't really have another normal summon in your deck, so diameter is pretty decent for that. And if this card is used as material for a Mathmech, Synchro, or Exceed monster, it can basically negate the activation of a card or effect during the turn in which it was summoned. So you give whatever monster you summon using this card as material an Omni Negate for the duration of that turn. Now that is especially useful considering you'll be summoning one of those monsters during your opponent's turn off of your Super Factorial. So it's basically just like an extra Omni Negate when used as material. Then our other extenders, we of course have Microcoder, which we're using as a small world bridge for the deck. Small world bridge basically allows any of your Mathmechs to go through Microcoder into any of your other Mathmechs other than Nabla, but you don't really ever want to search for Nabla, so it's fine. Microcoder covers most of your small world needs, and you can normally go into things like this, I would imagine, through other means. I'll be honest, I never checked for a small world bridge to Nabla, because why would I search for Nabla? But yeah, generally speaking, that's fine. You can go through any of your Mathmechs through Microcoder to get into any one of your other Mathmechs. And then we got Parallel Exceed. Will special summon itself. When you link summon a monster, it will special summon itself to one of the arrows that it points to, and then will summon another Parallel Exceed from the deck. They both change themselves to level 4, which is pretty neat for Exceed summoning or just extending your link plays. Sign up maining, discard a card, add a level 4 lower Cyberse from deck to hand. Pretty straightforward stuff. Mathmech Equation, target a Mathmech monster in the graveyard and bring it back. We got Small World, which basically searches your deck for any card, any monster. And lastly, Super Factorial. Super Factorial will target 3 different Mathmechs in your grave, summon all 3 to the field, then either Synchro Summon or Exceed Summon using all of those monsters. You're going to use this card during your opponent's turn to summon out Laplacian, like you saw in the gameplay. I'm not going to reiterate myself, you saw it in the gameplay, so you know what it does. This card is absolutely mental. Again, Super Factorial and Circular are like the only reasons that this deck is salvageable, for sure. Getting into the extra deck, we have, of course, the boss monster of the deck, the Firewall Dragon Dark Fluid. It negates any monster effects activated by your opponent during the battle phase. Kind of niche. Quick effect, you can send a Cyberse monster from your deck or extra deck to the graveyard. Noteworthy. And if you do, this card gains its attribute of the monster that was sent, and it gains 2,500 attack points. It can attack monsters a number of times each battle phase up to the number of different attributes. So you're going to be sending primarily, first of all, a wind during your turn. And during your opponent's turn, if they don't do anything that you want to negate, you can generally send like a fire from deck to graveyard or something like that. Or maybe like an earth from your main deck through like multiplication or something. But generally speaking, you are going to be sending this, which means that you're not going to get an extra attack from that. But you're already dark and you're already wind. Which means that when it comes back around to your turn, after you've negated one of your opponent's cards, you're going to be using this to send a fire monster or a wind monster or something like that to the graveyard, or even water if you still have Splash Mage somehow. And you're going to boost yourself up by another 2,500 and you're going to gain a third attack. This card is absolutely insane. And it has 2 targets, ideally, that you want to be sending from extra deck to grave. Wind Pegasus at Ignister. When a card you control is destroyed while this card's in your graveyard, banish this to spin one of your opponent's cards back into the deck. Pretty great. And the Mural Logic Aggregator, when sent to the graveyard, will target a card your opponent controls and negate its effects until the end of the turn. So it just turns your Firewall Dragon into a negate, which is neat. Then we got the Final Sigma. Mathmech Final Sigma is unaffected by any card effects other than Mathmech cards so long as it's in the extra monster zone, and if it battles a monster while in the extra monster zone, any battle damage your opponent would take is doubled. If this card ends up getting destroyed, you can add a Mathmech card from deck to hand. So the idea behind this is you want to boost it up to crazy heights with multiplication, give it multiple attacks off of Nabla, and you should be able to pretty much one-shot your opponent using Final Sigma. doesn't come up super often, but it is definitely a win condition, and playing into this meta, you're going to want as many different flexible win conditions as possible, and Sigma is definitely one of those surprise win cons that once you like slap it down onto the board, your opponent might not see it coming. They might think you're going for an Exceed or a Link play or doing something like that, but if you just slap down Sigma and they're not ready for it, it will win you the game. Guaranteed. Laplation, we've already talked about this card. When summoned, detach up to 3 materials to apply these effects in sequence, if applicable. Send a random card from your opponent's hand to the graveyard, send a monster they control to the graveyard, and send a spell or trap card they control to the graveyard. Alimbertion, when summoned, will detach between 2 to 4 materials to activate the appropriate effect. You're only ever going to detach 2, and that's to add a Mathmech card from your deck to your hand. It can also tribute a monster you control to special summon a level 4 Mathmech from your hand or graveyard, which is kind of nice sometimes. It's nice, again, you saw in the gameplay, for if your opponent flips one of your monsters face down, you can basically just resummon it to the field. You can also use that effect to summon out something like your Nabla, which has a decent effect on board, or to tag out a non-tuner for a tuner, or vice versa. So its effect is kind of neat. It definitely offers a little bit of flexibility and viability, but it's not like core to your combo or anything like that. Almirage, purely here for a Parallel Exceed extender. If you get interrupted or you don't have a great hand, it just means you can do some stuff. Lingeribo, same thing, it's just a link 1 that you can summon if you have like a spur leftover monster, or if you just need something to trigger off your Parallel Exceed, it's here. It's also pretty good as just a tack on to your end board to negate evenly matched, so that is definitely something worth considering. Update Jammer, when sent to the graveyard for a link material, you will target a Cyberse monster, and that monster will be able to attack twice. Splash Mage, bring a Cyberse back from graveyard and defense. Jeagle and Crystal Heart, bring back an Earth Link monster, summon it to a zone that it points to. Transcode Talker, bring back a Link 3 or lower Link monster to a zone it points to. Also, anything that that is co-linked with this card, when it's co-linked, all the monsters co-linked with it and itself are all untargetable, and they all gain 500 attack points. Deco Talker Heat Soul, pay 1000 life points, draw a card once per turn, it's a quick effect, pretty dope. Access Code Talker will boost itself by 1000 attack multiplied by the link rating of one of the materials used for its summon, so if you use a link 3, it gains 3000 attack points. You can also banish link monsters from your graveyard, 1 per attribute, to pop that many cards your opponent controls. So you can banish a dark, pop a card, banish a wind, then banish a water, then banish a fire, whatever, but you can only banish each attribute once per turn to pop a card. Your opponent cannot activate cards or effects in response to Access Code Talker's effects. And lastly is the Firewall Dragon, which we've already talked about. So that's the full deck. Again, a little bit of a mouthful compared to other decks, but realistically most of your main deck cards are super straightforward. They're really not all that fancy or special. Yeah, Mathmech's pretty decent right now. You can do some stuff. It's definitely fun, and the Terahertz is a really funny way to win the game. Abso-freaking-lutely. You can summon it in positions where your opponent isn't able to like super shut you down, but trying to play through even 2 hand traps can be rough in a lot of situations. Trying to play through 3 is virtually impossible. So yeah, just take that with a pinch of salt, do what you will with it. It's definitely a lot of fun, so if you're a fan of Mathmech, you're going to love this card, and the deck in general is in a pretty decent spot. It's just got a lot of competition. So if you're interested in this video or any other sort of content that we do, subscribe to the channel if you got this far. Obviously you liked something that you were seeing, so subscribe, like the video if you want. Check out one of these other videos that you're looking at on the screen to get more ideas and more deck profiles that we do. We do new videos every single day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.